Hello, everybody. Welcome to ACIL Policy and Practices Meeting 2021 version. Just a brief uh, description intro for others that aren't familiar with our P2 meeting. Generally, the ACIL meeting in this winter spring season is held in Washington, D.C. And it's called Policies and Practices, where we meet with government agencies and other agencies to discuss some of the practices, policies, and get input, provide input, and have an interaction with that in person. With COVID, last year it was canceled, and this year we're going virtual. So we have a series of good presentations. We have two sessions. This first one now, and then we'll take a break, and then at 3:15 Eastern, 2:15 Central, we'll pick it back up with another section. So right now, we have Jeff Withey of the Federal Highway Administration. And Jeff, I don't know if you'll have anything to say, but I believe Mike Prawl is a senior concrete engineer with the FHWA. He'll be talking about performance engineered mixes and the Mobile Concrete Technology Center. And then after Mike will be Leslie McCarthy. She's a senior asphalt paving engineer, and she'll be talking about the Mobile Asphalt Technology Center. So Mike or Jeff, I don't know if you want to kick it off and have any opportunity to say anything.
Yeah, no, I just appreciate the feedback from the earlier meeting when folks in this group shared kind of what you were interested in hearing about. And so as you guys were talking, I immediately thought of Mike and Leslie as probably our best folks within Federal Highway to address those topics. So I appreciate Mike being here, and I'll check with Leslie, see if I can get it in contact if she's going to be able to. Oh, there she is, joining in. So I appreciate both of them being here, and just in the future, if you, as you guys, for these meetings going down the road, if you have particular topics like this, don't hesitate to speak up, because we can try to organize the best possible folks that we have within Federal Highway to address your specific areas of interest. So thank you, Mike and Leslie, for joining us today and sharing about your programs.
All right, great. Thanks, Jeff. So that being said, Mike, you need to take over control. You can work with Bob to, if you have any presentation to display.
Okay, as Jeff mentioned, I was asked to talk today about performance engineered mixtures and to give kind of an update on what's going on nationally, and then also a little bit about what we're doing with the Mobile Concrete Technology Center. And I appreciate the interest in the topic, because these two topics together make up about 90% of my job. So again, the interest is encouraging for me. We'll start with the PEM, and just to lay a little groundwork and sort of where it came from and what we're trying to accomplish nationally with it. We look at the evolution of concrete testing, and back in the early 20s, we got the slump cone, and you can see what cars look like. And then late 40s, we got the type B pressure meter, and cars had come along a bit. And then in the early 80s, we got the rapid chloride test. And again, you see cars had made a bit of progress. But other than strength testing, these are the tests that make up the lion's share of what agencies do for determining the acceptance of their concrete. And our technology hasn't progressed since the early 80s. And what other sector exists this way? Think, what did your cell phone look like in the early 80s? What did your TV look like in the early 80s? I saw a few faces in the crowd that look like they may share some experience with me and being the kid who gets to go up and move the rabbit ears to get the better reception. So it's time, and the doors have been opened for us now to evolve concrete a bit because of what our research products, new research products have come from the research community. What we're trying to do with PEM, as it says in the first bullet, kind of get beyond this idea that we determine concrete quality by slump strength and total air, none of which has much correlation to long-term performance and durability. And again, we want to work with states and industry to incorporate these new tests and new technologies that do correlate to service life, and start to design our mixes and base our concrete acceptance, again, on these properties that really do matter. And then we want to work, again, with states and industry, kind of develop performance type specifications that as we look at how things are going to evolve with agency programs, the agency staffing levels have been on a downward slope for quite some time, and that's not going to change. And we need to, more appropriately rely on engaged and robust QC programs. And so we want to help incorporate these kind of technologies into QC programs, which will then move into the bottom bullet, give us the opportunities to start to remove prescriptive restraints from specifications and open up the door for industry innovation. Get rid of things like minimum cement content in our mixes. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. This is the group that's leading it nationally. And again, the gentleman at the top, several of the top concrete researchers in the country, and they have produced a number of these new tests. But the real key is down at the bottom, that last bullet with the ETG participants and reviewers. The states and industry are very engaged in this. So this is not a government initiative that is being forced forward. And I think you'll see some of the examples I show. Industry is very much on board with this, and it is a collaborative effort to move forward to advance the concrete technology. You may have heard of AASHTO PP84, and some people, and I wanted to address this because some people will think that PEM equals AASHTO PP84. And I think the best way to look at it is PP84 is one of the constituents or a product produced by the PEM initiative. And it's a guide to mix design. And as it says, you're specifying the things that matter. And I lead off with strength. And I just said, we got to get away from strength. It's not a parameter that really correlates to durability. Well, we need to include strength, but we want to take a new look at strength and how much strength do we need? And if we have a 4,000 PSI design, whether a bridge deck, a girder, a pavement structure, whatever it is, if we need 4,000 PSI, 6,500 is not better. And that's really the approach we're trying to pursue as far as the strength side of PP84. But then again, incorporate a number of these properties with the newer tests that do correlate to performance. And I put an asterisk next to workability because we will test concrete. Agencies do a lot of acceptance testing in the hardened state. But in the pursuit of good hardened properties, we don't want to overlook the fact that it still has to be placeable and workable for the contractor. And on the slip-form paving side, we have two very good new tests, and we are developing the equivalent structural tests right now for those. If you want to know some more about the history of PEM, here's a couple publications from the National Concrete Pavement Technology Center at Iowa State. We put these together back in 2017 when we were first really kind of ramping up the initiative nationally. They're about 5 or 6 pages each, really good reading and a good solid background if you want to pursue this topic. We have a national pooled fund. And again, I think the key here is these second 2 bullets is it is the states and industry, and there are a number of industry organizations. And each of these 3 different entities are putting in about $1 million combined. So we have 19 states putting in a little over $1 million total. And again, industry has stepped up with their financial support. So they're not only providing technical advice, but financial support, which I think indicates the level of buy-in that they have to this effort. These are the pooled fund states. So you see it stretches from coast to coast, a number of different exposure environments, different concrete issues, but they all see the kind of the value and the principles. Of those pooled fund states, we have developed some specific training to help the states move forward with implementing the PEM initiative in their state. And you can see the states that have had the training so far, which I think may correlate some to the level of interest in moving forward. And I should point out, too, that it's not just the states that are in the pooled fund that have some interest in PEM concepts. We're working with Vermont, also working with South Carolina. So just the fact that they're not in the pooled fund does not necessarily indicate a lack of interest. We in Federal Highways provided some incentive funds to get states to try these principles on their projects. And each one of the starred states that you see got anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 to try PEM in the way that best fit their needs. We very much see this as not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's very customizable and tailorable to local needs. And we're starting to get the reports back from these pilot projects the states tried. I'll share a couple of them with you here. In New York, both state and industry noted the PEM approach was beneficial. And the PEM mix tested better than their Class C mix. And this was an interesting project because they got the project started with their Class C mix. And partway through the job, they changed over to the PEM mix. So we have a direct, head-to-head comparison, and I'll share some of that with you on the next slide. The third bullet says the second supplier was reluctant to participate. And that's kind of interesting because the first supplier walked off the job and refused to participate. They wanted nothing to do with PEM and again, just refused. So the second supplier came on board. They were reluctant. The state, I think, coached them up a little bit, and they really dug in and explained to them what we were looking for. They got comfortable with the QC requirements, thought it really wasn't much of an increase for them. And then they did some trial batching and were very happy with the mix. So they went forward with it. And you'll see the needs. I think that training need is kind of a commonality from just about everyone. These are new tests, so we do need to do some training on that. The second sub-bullet there, the understanding roles and responsibilities. I give New York a lot of credit because they didn't just, on their first try, they didn't just try to experiment with a new test or two. They really did try to shift into relying more on QC and agency monitoring of QC, which again I think is needed if we're going to move in the performance spec direction. And let me jump to the last bullet, which is I think the most significant. They tried it once, and now they are doing another project without any federal incentive money. They're going to further pursue this on a structural type project. And here's just some data. Again, the blue line is the surface resistivity testing, and the blue line is their typical Class C. And you can see after about 84 days, it's tapered off right around 12. And compare that to the PEM mix, which again out at 154 days is almost 27 and climbing. So you see substantially better performance with these type of mixes. In Iowa, I mentioned the new workability test. The box test is one of those developed by Dr. Lay at Oklahoma State. And this is a very experienced contractor in Iowa. And they had been paving for years and years and years and were very comfortable with their mixes. And they took a look at the PEM approach and what's in PP84 and relied heavily on the box test. And they were able to take 45 pounds per yard out of their mixes. I don't need to go over each of the bullets here. You see the technician training is another theme. They expanded their typical QC requirements, and the contractor readily absorbed that. In fact, the comment I heard back was, "This isn't a big deal for us. We'll just do for you what we do for FAA." So there are other customers already requiring, typical QC requirements above and beyond what's maybe normal in the highway sector. And then in 2020, this past year, that same contractor was awarded several other projects, and they came back to the DOT and said, yes, we bid this job under your standard spec, but that experimental job that we did, the PEM thing went so well, we'd like to do it in accordance with that criteria, and the state has approved it. So again, when you get industry coming and asking for this change, I think it's an indicator that we're onto something here. In North Carolina, again, I won't go through each of the bullets, but I think you can see the generally favorable feedback from both the contractor and the state. Under the super air meter, again, you see the training again, but readily incorporated into QC. And the same comment with surface resistivity. Also under surface resistivity, the state has decided, after being exposed to this test, seeing the value in it, they are now equipping all their state labs. We are doing some training for them, and they're working with Dr. Cavallini at UNC Charlotte to develop a specification that meets their needs. And some highlights and quotes from that report. Again, the green highlight, the first one, this is from the contractor, and this was a design build project. And again, similar to New York, they had already started the project with a different mix. But after their experience here in trying the PEM tests and revising their mixes, this contractor, and we have continued to keep in touch with them, they are now using this approach on their own, regardless of whether states are requiring it or not. And I'll jump to the bottom, the state highlight, as with New York, they tried it, they liked it, and they're going to try it on another project. And I think in summary, one of the things COVID has brought me is the opportunity to spend much more time with my 3-year-old grandson. And I read him a lot of Dr. Seuss books. And I look at PEM where it sits now as kind of a green eggs and ham situation that people may tend to wrinkle their nose initially, but the ones that take a bite of it seem to like it. So scroll through just some things going on in other states. To make you kind of aware, Pennsylvania has tried a couple of projects, and here's some of the other spec changes they're making. And the last of the 4 sub-bullets, several of the tests they are continuing to evaluate. And the last bullet, their industry is very supportive of PEM locally in Pennsylvania. Here's Kansas. Kansas, one of the leaders in implementation of the super air meter. They are considering requiring it in mixed design for 2021. And again, those last 2 bullets, I just wanted to show that some of the things that are incorporated in this PEM initiative are not necessarily big changes in some places. So the optimized gradation concept is sort of an underlying foundation to PP84. And here, Kansas has been doing that for 10 years. So some states have bigger leaps than others to make to move forward with this. Colorado done some great things with their spec, particularly that first sub-bullet, getting rid of the max and min cement content. Again, if we have a supplier who can meet all of our performance requirements with 500 pounds of cement, why would we mandate they put 550 pounds into our mix? So again, a lot of credit to Colorado for some real positive change in their spec in the past year or 2. Wisconsin, another leader in the super air meter. Again, as with Kansas, they're looking at using it for their acceptance testing this year. And they've also now provide an incentive for aggregate gradations. And with a properly graded aggregate, they allow the contractor to drop their cement content. Michigan, again, similar, out on the front with the super air meter. And they've been optimizing their aggregates for over 20 years. So with that, let me jump to our Mobile Concrete Technology Center program.
Okay, there it is. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike, can I ask a question? When you say these states are considering the super air meter in the mixed designs phase,
Yes.
what does that mean? Does that mean that they're requiring that the super air meter parameters be run during the mixed design phase and submitted, or?
Yes, and it must hit certain criteria. Whatever limit the state sets has to be met with the mixed design submittal.
Okay,
That's what they're considering at this point. That's their first step towards implementation.
And then is that then rechecked further on in the construction phase, or are they not gone to that step yet?
I think Kansas and Michigan and Wisconsin are all close to that and considering it. Nobody has made that leap yet. I believe New York may have done a pilot project or 2 with just the SAM, unrelated to anything else, use just the SAM. I think New York has done probably more actual field work on projects than anybody else.
Okay.
Yeah, I can tell a little bit about Wisconsin. We've got a lot of experience with that. They did quite a few trial projects utilizing the mixed design process, using the box test, SAM, some other things. And then they had work in the field where the work was done, roads were paved with that same testing. Currently, most larger concrete paving projects have a mixed design item, so that the mix is designed using the current Wisconsin PEM guidance. SAM testing is done, and box and all that. And then there's an incentive to do the aggregation monitoring and keeping it optimized. And if they're still doing some trialing in the field, but not as much as a few years ago.
All right, you guys, and now you can see my slide with my team on it.
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. Lisa McDaniel from our Iowa division is a real database and data management guru, which I am not. So she gives me a lot of help in that area. And then the bottom row is my contract staff. Joggin is the project manager and my lead engineer. Jim and Josh are the other engineers, and then Nikolai and Jerry are my technicians. And what we do with the trailer, I guess, focus on the graphic here. Our job is to bridge the gap between research and implementation. We identify promising products coming out of the research community and the research process, or existing ones that are underutilized, but that offer promise and potential, to benefit states and/or industry, and then work with, again, states and industry to incorporate these technologies to improve concrete. And then also we do provide some amount of technical assistance to the states with specifications and other issues. The first two bullets here are our program activities, and the pictures are reflective of the first two bullets. And this is really the backbone of our program and has been impacted by COVID. We go to active construction projects. State and contractor invite us to a project, and we set up, in the field on the project and demonstrate the technologies. If I had the upper right picture, the gentleman in the middle in the white hard hat that's Nikolai, my technician, demonstrating the super air meter. Again, you can see we're right out on the project, so we could show folks, here's how these technologies work with your concrete on your projects, which is a lot better than saying, here in Montana, this is what we found in Arkansas. And then I'll talk a little bit more about our workshop in just a minute, and our loan program. And then you see the other bullets, some other things that we do to help promote concrete technology. We get around quite a bit. Since 2008, these are the states we've been to. And shortly after COVID ends, when we get to be mobile again, we have invitations from Wyoming, and we're actually halfway through a visit to South Carolina. So we will be getting to fill in the map just a little bit more very soon. The workshop that we have, and again, this is, I think, one of the real key things that we do to help drive change, is after we go to the state and do the testing, we're 2 weeks on their project to demonstrate the technology. Then we go away for a few months, we do some longer term testing, and we put together this 2-day workshop that builds off our field visit and our spec review. And this workshop, it's not a training effort per se. We really want the decision makers and change drivers from the state and industry to participate. And we try to come out of this workshop with an action plan saying, based on your materials, your projects, your specifications, and these new technologies, here's where we think you can advance your concrete program. And then we, in this workshop, we try to set up an action plan and move forward. And we continue to work with them. And we got a good example here from the past year with Caltrans. Because they're so big, we did a little more than we normally do. We went to 2 projects and we did the 3 open houses and workshops. But before we came, they let us know there were several parts of their specification they were concerned with and wanted to update. So we developed a testing plan. We certainly reviewed their spec, developed a testing plan to help support the recommendations we thought we would make, and put that all together. And then in that workshop, the Caltrans and industry developed a working group to update their spec, and they invited us to participate. They adopted our recommendations, and on the first project they tried it on was a $400 million project, and they bid half of it with their old spec and half of it with the new, and they saved $9.25 million. And I said that's a big return on investment because it cost us about $300,000 for the Federal Highway Administration for our efforts in California, but on the very first project it saved over $9 million. So again, we like to think we add some value to the concrete community. With COVID, we have changed our program a bit. Again, the lower level bullets, kind of work from the bottom up on this slide. The lower level bullets are all the same, really haven't changed a whole lot. The training video briefs, you saw in the feedback from the states and these field projects about the need for training. And we got to looking at our technologies, and there really are a lot of videos out there, but most of them are aimed at engineers. There's very little aimed at technicians. And our technicians, again, nationwide experience, do a lot of testing. They're very, very good technicians. And so we thought that was a void we could fill. And we're in final editing for the first 2 we've done, and we're shooting a video for the 3rd right now. And hopefully we'll be having those rolled out very shortly. We do virtual tours for conferences. Again, we get a lot of invitations to have the trailer come set up at conferences, certainly pre-COVID. And we try to recreate that experience now virtually, and we've done it a number of times and have hit on, I think, a pretty successful formula with that. And then for the live training, and this is something I want to open the door to you all, this is something maybe you can work with us on. And if you haven't worked with us before, I know it's a little unusual maybe to approach someone and just say, hey, come give me free training, but that's what we're after. And what we do is I'll show you on the next slide, we have about 10 of our technologies that we will do an hour-long, sort of customized live webinar for your organization. And we don't do these sort of like next Tuesday, we're going to do a super air meter presentation, and everybody can sign up. We're an implementation organization, so we really prefer to meet with groups, either individual companies, or sometimes we have met with contractor industry associations, or a single state at a time, because we really not only do we want to expose you to the technology, but really have some discussion about how does it fit in your program, and how we can move it forward in your program. So again, we want the engineering community to be exposed to these. So for any consulting firms, they're going to throw the offer out, get in touch. It's free training. Pick the topic, and here are the topics we're offering. Each one is an hour long, and we have Joggin does some engineering level narration remotely, and then Josh leads the on-site discussion. Nikolai will actually physically perform the tests, and Jerry handles the camera angles on the backside and the zoom shots. So these have been pretty popular. We have a number of them already on our calendar coming up, and we schedule them on demand. So again, don't be looking for the webinar we're going to do. We will schedule it upon request. We have an equipment loan program. Again, anybody and everybody, free of charge, could borrow our equipment to try it. We'll train you. I have about $500,000 worth of equipment to loan. Virtually all of it is on loan at any given time. So we just kind of arrange shipping from one borrower to the next. But again, that is something that's available to you if you want to familiarize your staff with some of the new technologies. We have a one-pager series. Again, you saw all the states we get to. We get exposed to things around the country. We get to identify some trends and see things maybe before the rest of the concrete community at large. When we identify a particular topic or an issue with the topic, we put together one of these one-pagers. And they're not meant to tell the whole story. We're just kind of saying, hey, here's an issue. Here's why it's an issue. Here's some possible solutions. And then we include references and additional information for people who want to follow up. And the last thing I will offer you, again, I mentioned optimized gradation is sort of the foundational concept of PEM. We have put together a spreadsheet tool to help with mixed designs, and this is an example from Wisconsin. But you input your aggregate gradations, and then you can play with the blends, and the output from the program will show you the results. The lower left is the Shillstone workability chart. The lower right is the 818, and the upper right is the tarantula curve, which is the one that we are promoting and that we endorse. And you can see in this example, it's the results show that it's too coarse a mix. So you can very easily go back, plug in some new numbers, remix your blends. Too fine a mix, and just keep adjusting to trying to zero in, with the aggregates you have available and the gradations. You can zero in and kind of get the best optimization you can with this tool. Again, free of charge. Shoot us an email. We'd be glad to send it to you. Like everybody and their brother, we've got a website too. Stop in and visit us. There's lots of other information in there beyond just what I've said here. And if you can see, there's a tiny link there, the Concrete Clips videos. They're a great series that Tom Yu in our office has put together. A lot of good information and some short videos there. And with that, that is the end of the road for me. It's my wife and I in Alaska about 5 years ago on the vacation of a lifetime. And I think we're going to hold questions until after Leslie is done.
Great. Thanks, Mike. That was very interesting. A lot of good stuff there. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Then we'll roll right into Leslie.
Okay, great. All right. Well, firstly, thank you for inviting me to meet with your group today. You're a very important stakeholder for the things that we do.
Minor technical issues.
Are you able to see and hear me now and the screen?
Yeah, you're good.
Yes. Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
You're good.
All right. I heard technical issues. And I'm like, oh, what's now? Yeah. So I'm Leslie McCarthy, and I'm the program manager of the Mobile Asphalt Technology Center. And I actually was the program manager for this same program. Excuse me? Is everybody able to?
You're good. I think Bob's not muted.
All right. Yes. Okay. All right. So anyway, I was with this program from 2002 to 2006, and went to the Florida division office and worked in federal aid for a while. For family reasons, then I had to get back up closer to New Jersey and took a position with Villanova University outside of Philadelphia. I'm sure you guys have heard of it, probably because of basketball, but they also have a really good civil engineering program. And so I taught on faculty there full time for just over 10 years, and then in 2019 came back again to Federal Highway to this program. So very excited to work with Mike and Jeff and tell you a little bit more about our program today. So this is the team. We have just very similar setup to the Mobile Concrete Technology Center. We're sister or brother programs, whichever way you want to say that. And so a lot of the things you'll see kind of that we do is really the asphalt equivalent of the concrete side. But we have a partner in the Resource Center, Derek Neinerplant, who joined us about a year ago from Maine DOT. Brendan Morris is our project manager, and he leads a team, several of which come from Virginia Paving. And so we have our a materials lab and a field technician, Terry and Otto, senior lab technician, James. All three of them came from Virginia Paving. And then Dr. Vera Garavan is from Worcester Polytech. So he worked with Rajiv Malik up there, if any of you know him. We also have a few subject matter experts that are helping us out from NCAT and Mike Huner, who's formerly of NCAT. And then also Samantha Grove is our key marketing specialist. And so our program goals are to really just the same as what Mike explained, to create that link between viable research products and implementation in the field, both by states and by industry. And the way we accomplish this approach is really, this isn't blocking the view here. I'm not sure how to get this to go away. In any case, we conduct these through site visits, customized training workshops in which we build in the test results and observation from that site visit. We also have an equipment loan program that's growing, and that allows our industry and state partners to try out new technologies without committing resources to that. And then also, similar to what Mike explained, putting out topical information either through social media or through newsletter or the one-pagers. So some of the core activities that we have here, demonstrating test methods and equipment, we provide that on site. We also, in this interesting past year, have been able to do that virtually as well. Oftentimes we work to put together case examples from some of the innovation trials. So sometimes there's technologies that perhaps are not quite ready for full-time implementation, but they just really need that field evaluation aspect. And so we do that for some of the technologies, either that are coming out of things like NCHRP projects or coming out of our own R&D at Federal Highway Administration. One of the things that is newer that we're doing is a specification review. We offer that as part of our site visit, and typically it happens in advance of the site visit. We do that on QA specs, materials, or construction specifications, and we also provide that feedback loop then to Jeff Withy and the QA team at Federal Highway Administration. And then in terms of, obviously we have a workforce challenge ahead. We're kind of already in it, isn't it? With people who have an interest in our field and want to come work in our field, and just keeping like the institutional knowledge in for folks that are in the pavement construction area. And so we do have a rotational program. They can go through the concrete or the asphalt technology center. So it's to get our division office engineers, and you may have met a division office pavement material engineer at some point in your state, but we have them come and spend 2 to 3 weeks out in our trailer when we're out on a project and really get them the hands-on experience and exposure to the materials and construction. And hopefully then they can take that back too. And typically what we'll do is we won't host them in their own state. We'll have them come to a different state so they can look at good, interesting practices and things that are working well in another state to try and kind of bring that perspective back to their own state. So we also are in development of a quality and asphalt paving process workshop. It'll be multiple days. We are in the process of recording video briefs similar to what Mike was talking about with concrete. We're really kind of shooting for more of a technician level, so that they're going to be more technicians' tips and tricks, as opposed to the really technical, formulation of the different tests. This is more like our technicians kind of talking and giving tips on how to run the different equipment. And we're going to limit that to what equipment we're currently deploying, as opposed to all different types of equipment. We also have, because of the different things we're doing, we really kind of work within the scope of the agency specification we're on site or the standard. But we do have an opportunity in our stationary lab, the asphalt binder mixture lab implementation and delivery at Turner Fairbank, to get a little bit more into the deeper dive if there's technical analysis or issues. And one thing is, we really, in previous years, were focused just on the asphalt mix and materials, and now we've really expanded out to also provide technologies for deployment on post-install pavements, looking at things like density, surface characteristics in terms of safety, looking at monitoring performance during construction and after construction. So in terms of which technologies we offer currently, this is a listing. We're really categorized into 3 areas: mixture test, material test, and field test. And you can see there's several that we're currently deploying at this time. And then, some of these technologies, like I said, are tested for us at Turner Fairbank Highway Research Center. Hamburg wheel tracking test also is a mixture test that we have done at Turner Fairbank. We don't have that on board the trailer itself. These other technologies we have on board the trailer. So you can see there's a variety of different things we can do in terms of performance testing that supports the balanced mix design approach, as well as the more in-depth approaches like performance engineered pavements. We have materials that look at binder, pavement markings, aggregates, okay, looking at the quality of those before we get into a mix or before installation on the pavement. And then our field tests include things like being able to identify thermal segregation, getting in place pavement thickness as opposed to taking quite so many pores. And then also the circular track meter and the laser-based AIMS device are able to give us the mean profile depth to give us an estimate of macro texture. So that's like looking at safety of the mix in terms of skid. And then we have the dielectric profiling system, which helps us get a reading on the dielectric properties of the asphalt mat, which tells us a lot about the percent density. We can kind of skew that. So we also have these other support activities in terms of bridging into pavement design, as well as I mentioned before, the spec reviews. And a lot of people right now are looking at their density specs, especially longitudinal joints. And so that's something that we can help provide an independent view of as well. So we have an interactive map on our website that you can look at to see where we've been in the past 30 years. It also is searchable. So if you're interested in seeing, well, which projects have they been on that were stone matrix aggregate mix design, right? SMA, you could search SMA here, and it would just show you the projects that we've been to that are in SMA. So that can be helpful, especially when people are kind of wondering, well, can we get data? And we do have some data from some of our past projects. It, obviously as technology changes over time, things have now become easier to keep that data. And so that's a big emphasis we have right now currently, is trying to come up with a new way of storing the data and transferring that to our long-term infrastructure program, or LTIP, which formerly everybody's kind of more familiar with as LTPP. So for them to actually take that data and make that publicly available. So that's what we're working on now, is trying to pull in the field data and everything else. This just gives you a little bit of logistics. It takes us about 6 months really to plan a site visit. And this is just a listing of the steps. But the key features of that is really having a smaller kickoff meeting that kind of defines the scope of our visit. Then we do have an open house, which this is something in particular for your group. I'm hoping that that there's a connection we can forge here through Jeff to let you know when we're in the state where you're located, or where you may have colleagues located that you'd like them to come out to the open house. Obviously, we're going to be, when we actually can get out and travel again at some point, we're going to be a lot more creative. And even if things do get back to normal, we're going to use this virtual option. So we kind of have hybrid open houses. And so it'll make it possible for, no matter where we are in a state, other people to join as well virtually. Typically say 2.5 to 3 weeks. We're oftentimes hosted at the asphalt plant, whatever contractor is building the project that we're set up on via the state. And then we have a closeout meeting and then a closeout report. And this closeout, and typically we try to shoot within 90 days after our site visit to return that back. And this is really going to culminate in future, just the same way that Mike explained the concrete program. It'll culminate in a 2-day workshop on quality in the asphalt paving process. And the final results will be included as part of that training. So obviously, we also have had to be really creative in terms of how we can still have an impact without being mobile. So I've been kind of joking this year and calling us the SATC, the Stationary Asphalt Technology Center, instead of the MATC. But we have actually been able to get creative. Mike and I worked really hard with the folks that we worked with on the teams and just tried to figure out how we could do things. So some of the things that we've been doing to keep active during this period of time, a lot of specification reviews for several states. We also were helping out with performance tests, mixture performance test data analysis. So some states had kind of forged ahead, like Vermont and Maine, did a whole lot of testing and just hadn't had time to actually go back and organize and analyze the data. So we provided that support as well. We did have Mix come to us and did a number of testing projects for different states. Some of them kind of looked at balanced mix design implementation, and then other things were focused specifically on certain types of tests, depending on what the state wanted to look at. We have been putting a whole lot of effort into trying to update our website. It's a slow process just because a lot of the hoops we have to jump through on the Federal Highway internal side, but continue to watch that space for updates. And you should be seeing social media blasts come out from our program as well. We have a social media thing come out on LinkedIn and Twitter just about every 3 weeks. And then Mike's program and my program both, we are trying to do better at getting the word out. And this opportunity today is one of those great things where we can kind of tell you what we're doing and see where we might be able to help you or fit in. So this is just gives you a sense for what we produce. We do put together a formal testing plan for each site visit. Some of the key features of the visits we had this year were Rhode Island DOT wanted to look at a full introduction to the tests that are part of the balanced mix design approach that's been kind of catching steam the last couple of years. Trying to move away from entirely prescriptive specifications and getting more into at least some sort of index-based or indicator-based test results. We did a project for South Carolina looking at ultra-thick lifts where they actually were placing their lift in 5-inch passes and then compacting to 4 inches. And they also had a combination of warm mix, high RAP, and high PG, so it made it pretty interesting. Maine DOT, for example, we were doing a macro texture evaluation for some of their dense gradeds, as well as in South Carolina and Florida. And then we participated in a Caltrans public-private partnership round robin on their I-5 project. And this just, again, I won't spend time on this, but it kind of shows how we were able to support remotely through doing performance test analysis to see what Maine could take away from the testing that they had done, in this case with one of those indicator-based tests, the ideal CT. And, that's also led to some other questions that they wanted answered, and we're trying to continue to support them. We do provide additional technical assistance through Derek Meaner Plant at the Resource Center. And so we work very closely together to try and broaden the impact that our program has. We've produced one-pagers. They're pretty simple. You can find them on our website that kind of talk about these different technologies that we're deploying in the MATC, not just the mixture testing, but the field and materials tests as well. So there should be all the mixed test one-pagers are up, and hopefully the materials and field ones will be up in the next month or so. And over time, we'll also provide links to other technical articles. Like, for example, we have a link on our webpage that goes to some of the density initiative one-pagers that we wrote to support the tech briefs that were put out recently. And you can see an example of that here. So, enhanced in-place density, why is it so important? So really just kind of an overview, one-page thing that kind of catches your eye, and it's something that's easy to kind of go to leadership in your organization about. We also have another series of one-pagers that very soon will be on our website and release that spotlight on pavement density through the use of the dielectric profiling system. And so we have concluded a little series on Ohio DOT, and we're in the middle of writing one for a spotlight on Minnesota DOT. And so these will be forthcoming as well. Just like our brother or sister program, Concrete Lab, we've got an equipment loan program. We've been growing that slowly. It's only been in place now for really less than a year. We have a process in which the request goes through the Federal Highway Division Office, and these are just the different devices currently that we are able to loan out. Our DPS so far, the dielectric profiling system has been really popular, and so we're actually in the process of buying additional units because we've got a pretty big backlog already of states that are requesting. One of our units is now in South Carolina with a contractor, actually with Eurovia. And South Carolina DOT has been out almost every day, also checking out and working with the technology. And then Missouri DOT has our other unit. Because we're in this virtual environment, our third unit is actually with a consultant up in Minnesota, and they are responsible for doing the training because we've actually gotten to spend very little time with our own devices. We wanted to get those out to the states as soon as possible. So hopefully we'll have our own device soon, and hopefully this will kind of be something where we can be on site and helping to teach on. Okay, so I said we have a 2-day workshop. It's under development right now. It should be ready by early fall, and it's an in-person workshop, so until we're able to travel, we won't be able to hold these. But the idea is that we bring both industry and agencies together, and hopefully folks like you might be involved in this workshop when it comes to your state as well, to kind of just really go back to basics and talk about asphalt quality, and hopefully stem some ideas based on the MATC visit of things that you may want to try in your state. So we have our webpage, like I said, it's going to be updated quite a lot in the next 6 months. So feel free to jump in and have a look around. And with that, I'm concluding. And we do have a brochure that is, I think right now it hasn't been uploaded to our webpage yet, but I can email that to you if you're interested, so you can see a little bit more about our program. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Leslie. That was very, very comprehensive, very nice presentation.
You're welcome.
So are there any questions for Leslie or Mike regarding concrete or asphalt, technology issues, equipment, design, comments, concerns? One thing I can comment on is I've been involved in the concrete side of things with the performance engineered mixes and doing the designs and monitoring some projects on site. And some of my experiences have been, Mike, you brought up your spreadsheet that's available. I'd like to see where that is, because we had to go through several iterations here in Wisconsin with that spreadsheet to help design mixes. And the original came from Iowa, the concrete paving Technology Center.
Yep.
And it had some issues, and we worked through a few iterations, and it got better. And lately, I think it's working pretty well. I haven't used it this year yet, but there were some issues we had to work through. So I'm not sure what version you've got or the source of that, but
We developed this ourselves in-house. Dr. Taylor's version, Peter and I have sort of a friendly competition as to who has the more usable and
okay.
better tool. I am absolutely convinced that ours is a superior product.
Okay, well, I'd love to.
It's very,
I'd love
very
to
user friendly.
I
So is
don't
that
have a
up? Is
version.
that on your site? You said for
Yeah.
ready for download.
I believe it's available on the site. We're doing some things with the site now, so it's in a little bit of flux. If you don't see it there, shoot me an email and I'll just email you the file. It's
Okay.
very, very user friendly, but if you have any questions, certainly let us know. And if you happen to bump into Dr. Taylor, just let him know what you think of our version.
Okay. Yeah.
Greg, I feel your pain. I have a version. I created my own, and it literally took hundreds of hours to get it to the point where it's at.
Yeah. 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 And so what we even had with Peter's version, it was really close, but there were a few issues. But my thought, the biggest issue was that the performance of the mixes I thought were pretty good. There were a few projects where strength issues. Maybe cut too much cement, or I don't know what occurred, but there were a few strength issues on one project. But the biggest issue was the monitoring. So performing the QC documentation, there wasn't really any guidance developed on that. So what we had found is various consultants and engineering firms or the DOT personnel created different ways to document performance or monitor aggregation or present it. And there were a few different determinations how to calculate various values. And there was, I think in Wisconsin a couple of years ago, 3 different calculations used that didn't really match. So I think guidance on that would be.
Thank you so much for mentioning that, because I am working under our cooperative agreement with Iowa State, but Dr. Tarek Emelini at UNC Charlotte, along with Gary Fick and Al Innes, who are 2 long-term concrete industry folks, they have just sent me within the week the final draft version, I'm reviewing it now, of a new QC tool that we're putting out, and it is a sort of a soup to nuts on everything a contractor needs to implement PEM from a QC perspective, along with guidance from agencies. We show QC plans. And one of the things I really like through my career, I've had a lot of people ask me, what does a good QC plan look like? How do I know I'm looking at one? And so this tool provides examples of good, fair, and poor language in a QC plan. It has a QC plan template. That Jim is one of the things we include is the NetSet plan, that template that Greg Doyle developed many years ago. But that's part of what's included. So we absolutely realize that the QC area is one that needs attention, and we will be putting this out. I am turning comments in by the end of the month. I would expect by the end of May, we'll be rolling this out nationally, and we will further be supporting it with, I'll say, mini guides that we plan to develop based on that, along with training specifically for industry. So
Hey,
yeah, I
Mike.
appreciate you mentioning the issue, because that is a significant issue, and we're on it.
Fantastic.
And Mike, can I ask, are there many parallels to the airfield paving specs utilized by Army Corps and FAA?
In what respect? I mean,
In terms to the quality control plans?
I am not familiar with FAA's plan, other than, I think I mentioned during my presentation, the comment I got back from Iowa, from the contractor in Iowa, when we told them what we were looking for. His response was, "Oh, we'll just do for you what we do for FAA." So my assumption is there may be some similarities, but I am not terribly familiar with FAA's QC requirement.
Well, they're very rigorous, so I would.
That's our intent. Our intent is to move in that direction. Maybe I shouldn't say very rigorous, much more rigorous now. When you look around the country, there are some states that say we require QC, and yeah, we require that from the contractor. And I've looked at one state specification, and it says the contractor must perform all QC operations. That's it.
Mhm.
So, we need something a little more robust than that. And that's what we're looking to do with this QC tool, is kind of set the bar for, at least for public infrastructure concrete. What should we expect for QC? And what should our industry expect, from us in that regard? So,
Well, I
yeah,
know
it's certainly a hot topic right now.
Yeah, I know typically on a military airfield project, you get your target gradation, and you plot your coarseness workability factor, and you create a box around that, and then you have to check those gradations usually twice daily and make sure you're staying within that box. And if you start wandering off, and you have to start making adjustments to get back in there. So I presume that would there be some sort of daily gradation
Yes.
checks to make sure you're not wandering too far off of your ideal gradation. So
Yeah. Again, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Gary Fick or Al Innes, but both are very, very experienced folks in the industry, and they brought a very good industry perspective to this. So I think it is certainly a more rigorous document than I think most state DOTs would be the stage they're at now. But I don't think it's over the top, particularly because Gary and Al had such a strong hand in developing it. They brought the industry perspective and said this is a reasonable expectation.
Mike, do you see the industry moving toward a combined gradation goal similar to what asphalt uses, as opposed to gradations based on certain aggregate sizes?
We are pushing that very, very hard. Several states have changed, and a number of others are talking about it. But every presentation we make on the topic, every time we do a site visit, that's something we see. I mentioned some of the spec changes that we're really trying to push to move in a performance direction, getting rid of maximum minimum cementitious contents, right? Getting rid of single aggregate gradation requirements. Why should we care about single aggregate gradation? It's irrelevant. We care about the mix and the blend. And so, yeah, we are very much pushing that concept, and have gotten a receptive response from the states in general.
Okay.
All right, one other question I have, I guess, just for the whole group, experiences with super air meters. Has anybody used much of that? Any good? Any pro, any con, any ideas, any thoughts on the super air meter? Just either the use of them in the field, how well it works or how not. We know the concept, the behind it. Tyler Lay developed in Oklahoma that whole process. But has anybody used them? We have. Has anybody else used a super air meter?
My understanding is we've bought one to use in the lab. We have not used in the field yet. And that was part of my interest for getting you guys to come in and talk, was to find out how widely accepted the states were starting to use this equipment, because it's just a matter of time after the states start adopting this equipment before us in private industry need to start gearing up and start using this stuff on a regular basis. So that was kind of where I was trying to get to, Mike, was how soon do we need to start gearing up with this equipment and start becoming more familiar with it? And it sounds like it's going to be pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
I would think it's pretty soon. Again, when I several years ago, I think it was 2017, was when I really stocked up my equipment loan inventory. I have 18 super air meters. I have none available for loan. They're all out.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a waiting list. So it is probably the single of the PEM related topics, it is the one that generates the most discussion in terms of a testing technology.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is sooner rather than later. Again, several of the lead states are on the verge of putting it in their spec now. I think when the device first came out, there were some issues with O-rings and gauges and some other things, and Tyler's done some work to improve the device, and you know, it's still being worked on, but I think the states are getting to where they're comfortable now, you know, with using it. And the states are really, the decision they're making is it a mixed design only tool, or do we do it at some frequency during construction as well? But I think most states accept the idea that they're going to get to at least requiring it in mixed design.
Yeah, New York's actually come out with a PEM spec, and we just got onto 2 projects that they're going to actually use this on. So they're going to really be testing it out on these 2 projects.
Okay. Mike, could you also address my understanding that you guys are looking at modifying the rapid chloride permeability test procedures to change from vacuum saturation to more of an atmospheric type saturation process to more replicate what occurs in reality. And I may not be describing this correctly, but that the researchers are looking at that test procedure and maybe modifying that rapid chloride permeability test.
I mean, do you know where that research is being done? Is it?
I think it's a gentleman at Oregon State.
Okay, Jason Weiss.
Yes.
Yeah. Jason does a lot of work in those tests and related areas. I mean, that's his real thing, is, you know, diffusion through concrete and the tests that correlate to that. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant man, and does very good work. And Jason is on our PEM team. But for the purposes of implementation moving forward, what we're promoting, and we promote heavily through the trailer program, and I will say, as precursor to that, I have been a big supporter of the rapid chloride test for years. Mm-hmm. However, it's time to move past that test. The surface resistivity testing, or, you know, Jason, I think, prefers bulk to surface, but resistivity testing in general is such a superior option for many reasons that, you know, we're not suggesting doing a whole lot of work with the rapid chloride test because we plan to mothball it.
I think he was advocating we probably are going to end up with some sort of test where you are going to embed some probes in a cylinder and then take attach some meters to that and measure the resistivity after it's been atmospherically saturated. I forget the exact procedure.
Yeah, we actually have our Turner Fairbank branch, the research branch, just put out a contract. I can't talk too much about it because I'm on the award panel and it closed just this past week. But we have a type of contract out there to develop a sensor to measure in-place resistivity. And so that is probably, I know Dr. Weiss was one of the proposers, so I think that's probably the technology he was talking about, is that we're looking, in some ways, looking to move towards, you know, sensor-based in-place measurements.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like that one may be another year or two off at least.
At least, yeah. That one's that one's a decade off.
All right.
All right. Well, great conversation. Got a lot of good comments and questions. So, anything else? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. So I think this concludes first session, and we'll reconvene here at 3:15 Eastern, 2:15 Central for the second session. So thanks, everybody, Mike and Leslie, for your presentations. That was very much appreciated.
Yep. Thanks again for the invite. And again, as Leslie said, don't hesitate to reach out to us if any of those tools that we've got look like they might be of some use to you.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna look for that spreadsheet. I'll go online and check it out and see.
Yeah, and again, shoot me an email if you can't find it. I'll get it to you. It's on my desktop, so I can get it to you in 2 minutes.
Great.
All right.
All right. So 3:15.
Thank you.
Same bat time, same bat channel. All right. I don't know, maybe that shows my age. That was a Batman reference. Maybe you guys didn't see that.
I watched it.
Okay.
It was a rerun.
I don't know what you're talking about.